In this episode, we will look at the 5 characteristics I see in the most successful podcasters I know. These are the internal qualities, the ways of thinking, the ways of working that shape everything you create. The characteristics that help you build not just a show, but a body of work. So whether you're just starting out or you've been at this for a while and feel like your podcast could go a lot deeper, I hope today's episode helps you reflect and recommit to the kind of creator you want to be. Before we dive in, I would love to extend an invitation to you to join me inside one-to-one podcast coaching. This is where I help entrepreneurs and creators like you to build a differentiated and compelling podcast that is positioned to attract the kind of work, clients, and opportunities that you secretly want. We will work together to build a podcast that resonates with your audience, differentiates your brand, and establishes your position in the industry. Think of me as your strategic podcast partner. If you're curious about what this could look like for you, let's hop on a discovery call. I would love to learn more about what you're building, how a podcast fits into your bigger picture goals, and also map out a custom coaching plan that makes sense for where you're at right now. Sounds good? Awesome. You can book a discovery call at CherylLau.com/discovery. Again, the link is CherylLau.com/discovery. Now let's dive into this episode of Edit's History. Characteristic number 1, discernment of excellence. If you want your podcast to stand the test of time, you can't just aim to be consistent, you have to aim to be distinct. The most successful podcasters aren't just chasing trends or producing content for the likes, the views, or downloads. They prioritize depth over reach and substance over clout. Their work is built on clarity, care, and long-term resonance. They're not just publishing to fill a content calendar. They're building a body of work that actually matters. And craft is at the heart of everything. It's not just about churning out episodes, but really it's about refining, sharpening, and elevating what you produce over time. So the question isn't so much, did I publish? It's, did I create something I'm proud to be associated with? And discernment also means being intentional about how you show up. So whereas others might spread themselves thin across every platform, you are focused on being unmistakable, not everywhere, but anchored in wherever you are. Because to you, your podcast isn't just a form of creative expression, it's also an intellectual exercise. There's thought behind the message, the structure, and even the silence between the words. You care about how your ideas land, how your episodes make people feel, and how each piece fits into a larger story. So this isn't about just becoming another voice in your niche, but really building something signature, a presence so distinct that people associate a certain feeling, insight, or standard of excellence with you. What you're building isn't just a podcast, but it really is about the trust that you build with your audience. And ultimately, excellence as a podcaster isn't about doing more, but really it's about doing things with a certain level of care. Right? And that is what sets your work apart. So, are you building something that will hold up years from now, or just something that sounds good today? My guess is that if you're here, then you already care about doing this right. You're building a show that meets a higher standard, a podcast you're proud to share, not just in the next week, but 5 years from today. Characteristic number 2, the ability to think and create independently. The most successful podcasters don't follow cookie-cutter formulas. They build their own frameworks, and their ideas come from lived insight, not borrowed beliefs. Yes, templates and trends can be helpful at first, but eventually they start to feel stifling. And when that happens, what used to feel efficient now feels limiting. So how do you create something original without defaulting to what's already out there? Well, I would say start by asking better questions. Questions that are rooted not in comparison, but in your own experience, values, and voice. So instead of asking what's working for others, try looking at what am I uniquely positioned to speak on? Not because I've mastered it, but because I've lived it. What conversations do I feel most proud to create space for? If I stripped away every best practice, what structure, tone, or message would feel most true to me? Because originality isn't about just being different for the sake of it, right? It's about owning your perspective. And this is why the most grounded creators, they crave intellectual and creative autonomy. And some people, they just throw content into the online space just to stay visible. But for you, I know that you're designing an environment, right? An environment, and whether that's your podcast, your writing, or even your services, an environment where quality, emotional intelligence, and impact actually land. Because I know that at this point in your entrepreneurship or creator journey, those rigid playbooks and best practices, they just don't energize you anymore. And forced performance doesn't inspire you. Instead, you do your best work when the pressure is lifted and your point of view and perspectives can actually take the lead. And as you can see, this isn't about being edgy or contrarian, but it's really about being the version of you who believes deeply in the work. And for you, authenticity, it's not a performance, it is a practice. So for all of us, let's ask ourselves this. Are you creating from real conviction or just mimicking what seems to work for others? I'll let you answer for yourself. Characteristic number 3, follow through and commitment. So the best podcasters aren't just consistent, they are committed. Not to the metrics, not to the validation, but really to their word, right? That commitment is internal. They keep showing up because their ideas are worth the effort. Because the promise they made to themselves, it matters even when no one is watching. And honestly, I know that follow through isn't always exciting. It's usually really repetitive, but repetition honestly is what sharpens your voice, deepens your perspective, and builds that creative confidence. A lot of people talk about launching a podcast, and a lot of them will record a few episodes, but the ones who publish week after week, even without the perfect conditions, are the ones who will build something that actually has substance and staying power. To stay committed, you can't just rely on the bursts of motivation because that's honestly pretty unreliable. But what you can rely on are systems, a structure, and a cadence that you can return to even on your worst weeks, right? Because creating a podcast that you can actually sustain even when you're busy, tired, or doubting yourself, right? That is how the best podcasters continue to build something that lasts and stands the test of time. And as you continue to show up week after week, remember this. Success isn't just measured in numbers. It's also measured in whether you did what you said you would do. It's in the meaning behind your work, the depth of your message, the way it continues to matter long after the episode ends. So ask yourself, can you trust yourself to follow through even when the results aren't immediate? Are you someone you can count on? Because that is what separates podcasters who fade after a few episodes from the ones who really build something that is long lasting. Characteristic number 4, protecting the essence of the work. So a lot of creators begin their podcast with a sense of clarity. There's a reason why they started their podcasts, right? It could be a message that really matters to them, a story that they feel so compelled to share, or a perspective that really changed the way they see the world. And for a while, that clarity is enough to keep the momentum going. But then, slowly, the pressures of the outside world start to seep in. The algorithm wants this. Your coach said to do that. Your downloads dipped last week. Someone you respect went viral doing the opposite of what you believe in, right? And you start to think, am I doing this right? Should I pivot? Should I optimize? Should I do this or that, right? And this is the quiet erosion of your creative process, right? And they happen gradually and even very subtly at times. And little by little, you start to compromise that clarity, that why for getting more views and likes or reach, right? You start filtering your language so you sound more polished or more credible. And before you realize it, the podcast, it still looks great from the outside, but it no longer feels like it came from you. And that is why protecting the essence of your work is not a one-time decision, but it's an ongoing discipline. And it's the constant willingness to pause and ask yourself, is this still the work I am meant to build? Does this reflect my voice, not just a strategy? Am I proud of how I'm saying this, not just what I'm saying? Have I started to perform or posture in ways that pull me away from the work I actually care about? Right? Because real growth as a podcaster doesn't just ask you to become someone you're not, but it's asking you to become even more of who you already are, right? Not diluting any parts of you, but sharpening that, right? And I know that so much of what we see rewarded in this space is pushing in the opposite direction. We're told to scale, to grow big, to build for conversion. But what's rarely talked about is that if your work no longer reflects your original conviction, then growth doesn't feel like success. So I really think that you must be discerning here and protect the essence of your podcast. And that might look like saying no to opportunities or sponsorships or strategies that just doesn't fit, right? It might mean scrapping a format that used to work but no longer excites you. It might even mean taking a break, recalibrating, or revisiting the very first episode that you published to remember why you started all of this. It's not just the content, but it's really the conviction behind it. So, if any of this is hitting too close to home right now, ask yourself this. Is my podcast still an honest extension of my original vision, or has it drifted away from what I meant it to be? And if the answer is making you feel a little uncomfortable, then that is a good thing because that means you're being honest with yourself. And that is the first step to returning to the work that actually means something to you. Characteristic number 5, long-term impact over short-term validation. In this age of instant feedback, it is easy to conflate attention with impact. Like if a clip goes semi-viral, then you're suddenly like refreshing your analytics and wondering like, how do I repeat this again? Right? And if an episode underperforms, then the doubt creeps in. Am I even doing this right? But here's the truth. Short-term wins, they're easy to chase and even easier to forget. But what's harder, but far more meaningful, is building a show that compounds in value long after the episode was published. The podcasters who make the most impact aren't just optimizing for that spike in the views or downloads, but they're optimizing for that slow burn. They're playing a different game. They understand that resonance can't always be measured in the first 24 hours that it's published, right? These podcasters know that trust takes time to build and that real authority is earned through consistency, depth, and care, not just visibility. Because when you zoom out, the most successful shows are the ones that build a reputation. The listeners return not because of the virality or novelty or the shininess, but really because of the reliability. Their work feels so clear, compelling, and considered even on episode 5, 50, or 500, right? And this kind of podcasting doesn't always get the validation or applause right away. And in fact, you might feel completely invalidated or underestimated for a while, but you're okay with that because you're not creating for the quick hits. You're creating for that cumulative effect. And the thing is, short-term content is always asking what will get the clicks and likes this week, whereas long-term content asks, what do I want to be known for in 3 years from now? You're not here to build content that trends and then disappears. You're really here to build a body of work, one that stacks meaning over time and continues to hold up even when someone finds your podcast 3 years from now, right? A podcast that makes people say, wow, I wish I had found this sooner. And here's the thing. This kind of work does scale. It scales through word of mouth, referrals, and depth of the trust, not just through the algorithm. So here are some questions I want to offer. Are you creating for validation or for long-term resonance? Are you creating to be seen quickly or to be remembered deeply? Because if you're playing that long game, then the results might come a little slower, but they will come. And they will be sustainable and truly, truly yours. So wherever you are in your podcasting journey right now, I hope that this episode's reminded you of what truly matters. Because success as a podcaster may not always be fast or loud, but this is the work that really will last, right? And it begins with that quiet decision to keep going, to keep refining, to keep deepening, and to keep coming from a place that feels honest to you. Your podcast doesn't have to be the biggest, but it can be the one that lasts, the one that people remember, the one that shapes how people think and how they feel. And that all starts with you, the host behind the mic. All right, one last thing before we close out this episode. I would love to extend one more invitation to you to join me inside one-to-one podcast coaching and develop a podcast that is sharply differentiated within your niche or category and positioned to attract the kind of work, clients, and opportunities that you secretly want. Because when you build a differentiated and compelling podcast, your episodes will actually now represent your level of creativity, substance, and experience, and no longer will your show feel generic or even beginner. Your listeners will feel that your episodes were specifically curated for them, and from the captivating perspectives to actionable insights, they'll now actually take the time to listen to the whole episode. And most importantly, your podcast will finally align with your bigger goals. So whether that is attracting opportunities or clients, expanding your platform, or simply becoming more visible, this is what a differentiated and compelling podcast can do for you. So if you're curious about what this could look like for you, let's chat. You can book a discovery call at cheryllau.com/discovery. And on this call, I would love to hear about your vision and goals and explore how we can make this happen for you. So that is all for today. Thank you as always for tuning into the Edit History podcast, and I'll see you all in the next one. Sounds good? Awesome. Let's get to work.